to cover some general strategies that you can use to identify the correct response to the questions you're going to see on the ACT reading exam. Now, as we have mentioned elsewhere in this course, the reading exam can sometimes be a difficult exam for many students. For example, when you're taking the English exam, you can usually use your ear to kind of determine whether or not a passage is written correctly or not. And on the math exam, you can usually plug the answer you come up with back into the original equation to kind of verify whether or not you arrived at the right answer. But on the reading exam, you have to learn to read, understand, and even infer what the author is trying to say, and this is going to require a lot of thought and a lot of analysis without the benefit of such things as grammar rules or math equations to provide structure to guide you to the correct answer. However, all is not lost. If you prepare properly by developing a concrete strategy for taking the reading exam, it's not insurmountable. With a little planning and a lot of practice, you can score well on the reading exam. So, in this lesson, I want to show you several strategies that you can employ on the reading exam. Now, be aware that the strategies we're going to look at here are generic in nature. That is, they're designed to help you no matter what type of passage you're working on the reading exam. Prose fiction, natural science, social science, or humanities. Never fear, though, later in this course we will explore specific strategies that you can apply to each type of passage. For now, we just need to talk about some basic strategies that apply to the entire reading exam as a whole. We're going to look at using an engaged reading strategy, marking up the passage, anticipating the answers, and then finding the answers. So, let's begin by discussing engaged reading. Now, I am not going to lie to you. The passages on the reading exam are, for the most part, not exciting. These passages are usually very academic in nature, and it would not be unusual for you to be assigned to read such a passage in, say, a freshman or maybe even a sophomore level college class. That means the tone and the style tends to be a little stiff and formal, and perhaps some would say even a little boring. You'll probably find that you really need to focus your brain while you're reading these passages to stay engaged. I personally have found that it's really easy for my mind to drift when reading these passages. I'll be reading along, doing great, and then all of a sudden I find myself thinking, tacos. So, here's a couple of key things you need to keep in mind about these passages. First of all, the natural science, social science, and humanities passages are pulled from real essays. And as such, they are non-fiction, and they usually relay a series of facts to demonstrate the author's overall point or thesis. In other words, these passages usually contain a central theme, a list of supporting facts and examples, and possibly even a conclusion or an opinion. To answer questions associated with these passages, you need to be able to quickly analyze and identify the purpose of the passage, and then categorize the supporting facts presented by the author. Now, if you're the type of person who really digs majors like science, engineering, or even political science, you'll probably find that these passages are much easier for you to digest. Now, the fiction passage, on the other hand, is just that. It is fictional in nature. It's usually an excerpt from a much longer story. Now, where the natural science, social science, and humanities passages require you to kind of put on your Mr. Spock ears and analyze just the facts, ma'am, the fiction passage requires a much more emotional approach. To answer the fiction passage questions, you need to be able to identify the key characters in the story and determine what is happening from each character's perspective. In essence, you really need to be able to get inside the head of each character and understand what they're thinking and feeling, as well as how they relate to each other. Now, usually students who love English literature do very well on the fiction passage, while the science and engineering types, that would be me, struggle a little bit more. Also, please be aware that outside knowledge is not required to answer the questions about any of the passages on the reading exam. The answer to every question can be found within the passage itself. So don't be concerned if you don't understand what the heck the author is writing about. You don't need to. Now, the key to doing well on the reading exam is to stay actively engaged while reading the passage. Now, here's a common mistake that students make in this regard. They assume that engaged reading means analyze every little detail reading. Now, if you had tons of time to take the reading exam, then I actually think that this would be the preferred way to read these passages. However, you do not have tons of time, so reading slowly with extreme caution and precision really isn't an option. Because of the limited time allocated for the reading portion of the ACT, you must be engaged in the reading process but still complete it very quickly. Therefore, when you are initially reading a passage within the reading exam, you should not focus on the details. Instead, you need to focus on the overall meaning of the passage and how it's structured. There are several important questions that you should ask yourself as you read the passage. First of all, what's the main point the author is trying to convey? Also, ask, who's talking? Now, for the natural science, social science, and humanities passages, it's probably the author. However, for the prose fiction passage, there could be a variety of different entities who could be speaking. It could be the narrator, who also may be a character in the story if it's written in the first person. You may have protagonists, you may have antagonists, and you could have various other ancillary characters in the story. You should also ask why each paragraph was included in the passage. Now, writing is hard work. I've written several books myself, I know. So, there's usually a reason why a given paragraph is included within the passage. You should also ask how each paragraph relates to the other paragraphs in the passage. For example, on the natural science, social science, and humanities passages, some paragraphs will introduce the key points to be discussed in the passage, some will provide supporting details or facts or examples, while yet others may summarize the passage or relate the author's opinion. In addition, you should ask where the author is going. Now, as you do, please be sure to look for key signpost words within the passage. A signpost word, or a signpost phrase for that matter, is used within the passage to define the relationship between the ideas contained in the passage.